Governor Whitmer recently delivered her first State of the State speech and focused on her key campaign themes: infrastructure, roads, education, clean water, and public health. In his State of the Union address, President Trump also talked infrastructure. Well, here in Westland, our roads are a big problem, and they're a big problem for cities all across Michigan. So today we want to address this issue, and we sit down with Dan Fredendahl from OHM Advisors, who also sits on the Governor's Infrastructure Council, along with a fellow mayor, Michael Taylor from Sterling Heights. So today we're going to take a regional look at local issues, and you're watching In the W. Welcome to this episode of In the W. Our first guest today is Dan Fredendahl. He's the Vice President of OHM Advisors out of Livonia. They've been a long time consultant to the City of Westland. They do engineering work for us, architectural work, and a lot of other stuff. Dan is also a member of the Michigan Infrastructure Council. Dan, welcome to In the W.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. It's a great honor to be here, and I look forward to our discussion.
Well, we appreciate you coming in. We appreciate the city's continued partnership with OHM Advisors. You've been the city's engineering firm for a long time, and actually the architectural arm of your business helped design this beautiful city hall that we're in today.
And you know what? We're very proud of it, and we're actually proud of our relationship with the City of Westland. I think you've helped launch us on the growth curve that we've been on over the last few years.
We appreciate that. I know that you do work all over the state of Michigan, not just here in the Livonia Westland area, but you've got also in northern Michigan, and plus now also you have offices in Columbus and Nashville, I believe.
We do, and we have actually a growing presence in the state of Ohio, and believe it or not, we've got to be a little careful, but there's a little Ohio money that kind of slips back in and supports the Michigan economy.
Well, as long as it's not from Ohio State University, you're safe, okay?
There we go.
So, all right. Well, Dan, today we're talking about infrastructure and In the W, and you were appointed to the Michigan Infrastructure Council. You were actually appointed by Governor Snyder at the end of his term. Will your work continue on the council under Governor Whitmer?
It will. I was granted a 2-year appointment. Their appointments will be 3 years to the Infrastructure Council. There's 9 voting members on the council, and those appointments are staggered to get the Infrastructure Council up and running. So I have a 2-year appointment, and pretty excited to be involved in the Michigan Infrastructure Council.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what are the priorities of the council, maybe how often they meet, and kind of your plans moving forward with the council.
Well, I would say the priorities of the council are still being developed, but in simple terms, the council is there to help facilitate the effective management of Michigan's infrastructure over the next 30 years, which is our focus. And so in the short term, we're focused on developing a work plan that helps lead to a 30-year strategy on effective infrastructure management.
So, Dan, now has the charge of the council changed any with the new governor, or is she kind of, you picked up the work from Governor Snyder and just kind of continued on?
At this point, as we understand it, in communications from the governor's staff, they're still very focused on what we're going to call the Infrastructure Council is focused on the long term. Okay. So call it the governor's departments are going to focus on the short-term infrastructure issues.
Okay. So
we are looking at collaboration, education, prioritization, and what I may say is doing the right things and doing the right things one time.
So the governor, her mantra in the campaign was fix the darn roads. Now that she's governor, she's given her first State of the State address. She talked about she's going to offer solutions to fix the roads. Will the council play a role in that? And do you think that once and for all we're actually going to fix the roads here in Michigan?
Well, you got a few questions in there. Coming back, Mayor, I don't know the details of the governor's prioritization on fixing the roads and how she's going to attack it. That will come out with her March 5th budget, so we'll know shortly from the date of this taping. But coming in on it, the council, again, looking at what I'm going to call the long term, we're focused on collaboration. One thing I didn't mention earlier is we have the nine voting members, but we have 9 non-voting members, which are the state departments that are involved in infrastructure, i.e. DEQ, state parks, for example. But one of the great things that we've got on the council is we also have the Public Service Commission has a seat at the table on this council, which then brings in, say, for the city of Westland, DTE Energy and Consumers Power. Your utilities are at that table also. And so there's going to be much more collaboration across both the public and the private, which is one of the focuses of the council. Now, coming back to the roads, will we have a place in it? Yes, and that will come back. We have the Transportation Asset Management Council that reports up through the Michigan Infrastructure Council. And they have been doing some great work over 15 years and have a lot of data. And I'm sure that is informing the governor on where she's going to go on her details of how to fix the darn roads.
So Dan, there was an article that was in the Detroit News a few weeks back that was authored by yourself. And in that article, you talked about, in your opinion, the 3 major issues, the infrastructure issues facing the state of Michigan. Can you touch on that?
I can briefly. We've already talked, number 1, roads and bridges.
Yep.
The state of our roads and bridges, the ASCE has given, which is the American Society of Civil Engineers, looked at it from a technical viewpoint, and overall, the state of Michigan has a D- grade on our infrastructure, and our roads and bridges are right there at a D- level. As you come back, the other issue is our underground infrastructure that just doesn't get talked about much, the pipes below the ground. And the third thing is what I'm going to call the water quality issues, just our natural resources. We've got pollutants, and those are going to have to be addressed.
So obviously the needs are vast, and like you said, roads get a lot of attention, but when you look at the other infrastructure needs, in your opinion, Dan, maybe stepping back from the council more into your role as one of the city's infrastructure advisors, what can cities do? We're trying to get by with less revenue on an annual basis and still try to deliver 21st century services, but also try to work on the infrastructure. So you have any help or any insight that you can offer on what municipalities can do?
Well, it's interesting, and I know you've got a guest coming up from Sterling Heights, and we do work around the region. And working with your community, looking at what other communities are doing, I don't think citizens in the community truly appreciate what their leaders are doing. And you're taking steps to be more innovative. You're utilizing data, you're collecting the data, and now you're starting to make decisions with the data. And moving forward, I think we'll continue to collect more data, and we'll make better decisions with that data. And you are taking innovative steps. You're directional drilling to put pipelines in. You're trying to dig once. You're starting to collaborate more with other utilities. You're focusing more on things. How you package stuff together such that when you go into an area to do work, we've seen it with your team, you're paying attention. You are doing things, trying to do them one time, do them right, and then move on to another area.
All right. Well, we appreciate your insight. We're going to also be asking for your your advice moving forward so that we make sure that we're doing the right things with our taxpayers' dollars and always looking down the road on infrastructure. Like you said, the last thing you want to do is dig up a road, more than once. So we're being much smarter with that. So we talked a little bit about innovation. So we're going to take a quick break here on In the Debby. We're going to come back with what I consider one of the state of Michigan's most innovative mayors, and that'll be Mayor Michael Taylor from the city of Sterling Heights. We'll be right back.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
After proudly serving on the Sterling Heights City Council for 5 years, Mayor Michael Taylor was appointed as the full-time mayor of the city of Sterling Heights in 2014. Michael, welcome to NW.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so it's great to have one of our fellow cities from Macomb County. You're a long way today to be on NW, so we appreciate that.
My pleasure. It was not a too bad drive. The roads between Sterling Heights and Westland obviously need some work, but I think we're going to talk about that a little bit today.
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, you're telling me that you have problems with roads in Sterling Heights?
Yeah, even in Sterling Heights, as great a city as it is, we do have a lot of road and infrastructure issues. We're working on them. We've been pretty proactive over the last few years about finding city revenue sources to address our local roads, but we are captive to the state and the federal government, and we have more roads that need to be fixed and not enough money.
So I think that sums it up for just about every community in Michigan, especially those in southeast Michigan. So Mayor, Sterling Heights, about 130,000 residents. Yep. It's the fourth largest city in the state of Michigan.
It is.
So what are some of your major infrastructure issues? I know that Mound Road is something that we hear a lot that's discussed, and I think there's currently a project there, but what are some of the major infrastructure issues that Sterling Heights is facing?
Well, the two main major infrastructure issues that we have in the city of Sterling Heights and really in Macomb County, I'll start with the underground infrastructure. In the city of Fraser, just across from our border, in December of 2016, there was a major break of a sewer line there. It was an 11-foot diameter sewer line, something like 50 to 70 feet underground. When that thing broke, it really jeopardized how our wastewater gets out of the community, and ended up being about a $75 million fix. And so this is not the first time this has happened there, and it's not going to be the last time that you have these major underground infrastructure problems. Though, we can all see the roads in our communities, but we don't really think about the miles and miles of underground infrastructure that needs to be maintained and replaced. And the cost to do that, when we delay it, gets exponentially higher. So that is somewhere where we need relief. We need help from the state and the federal government. And also, just as importantly, is our roads and our bridges. We maintain hundreds of miles of local roads in Sterling Heights, and we have very important thoroughfares like Mound Road and Van Dyke and M59 Hall Road that we've been making progress on, but we're not doing enough because we just don't have the resources to do it.
So let's talk a little bit more about Sterling Heights. I mean, I think you really touched on the infrastructure stuff, but so tell us a few more things about Sterling Heights. I don't think that we have a chance for our viewers to maybe they don't know as much about Sterling Heights as they should, because
Sure.
even though you're a little bit bigger than Westland, we actually have a lot of things in common. Neither one of us have a true downtown, and we're both trying to revitalize shopping centers and stuff. So why don't you tell us some of your other challenges in Sterling Heights?
So we addressed, or we looked a few years ago at what are our major challenges, what are our strengths or weaknesses, and went through what we called the Visioning 2030 process. Where do we want to be 15 to 20 years down the road? And what we identified is that really it's about improving the quality of life for our residents. And what can we do to get the families who are not moving into Sterling Heights to consider it, those that are here to stay, and give something for everybody, no matter what age you are. We proposed a couple years ago a Parks and Recreation initiative that ended up being a $45 million investment in our parks and recreation system. We've got 26 neighborhood parks, and all of them received about $500,000 in upgrades. Our premier park, Dodge Park, just received about $8 million in upgrades. A new amphitheater for our concert series. It received a farmer's market that doubles as an ice skating rink in the winter that just opened this past December. A splash pad that we had tens of thousands of people use over the summer. Soccer fields, baseball fields, basketball, tennis courts, all these things. We said we're going to invest in ourselves to try to bring investment from businesses and residents. But you touched on a major component of our plan, which is revitalizing commercial and retail centers. We know that big boxes are closing down. I think we're in a big box that closed down right now.
We are.
So cities have to be innovative about how they take millions of square feet of retail space that really isn't necessary anymore and repurpose it. Lakeside Mall, I think the Detroit Free Press recently put your Westland Shopping Center and Lakeside Mall in the, I don't know if they called it the dying category, but malls that are just hanging on by a thread. We're looking at redeveloping that entire area into a downtown city center and getting away from just retail and looking at mixed uses, residential, hotels, finding attractions that people want. That it can't just be you go there and you shop and you leave. You have to give people something to do. And so we're looking at all those angles, and we've got a pretty ambitious plan for Lakeside Mall, but it's going to take time, obviously.
All right, well, that's exciting, and I think our malls are probably in that same category, like you said, and we're looking at a similar city center project here in what we call our Shop and Dine district, which surrounds the mall. And at this point, our mall's still doing very well. We did lose one of our big boxes, Macy's, but the rest of the mall is occupied and doing well. So it's kind of that balance. You want the mall to survive, but you also have to be thinking down the road as well. So
that's the thing. Lakeside Mall is, I would say, the same thing. It's surviving. It's actually fairly profitable for the stores that are in there, but shopping habits are changing. You want something. If you're going to go out to a shopping mall, you want to be able to eat at a nice restaurant. You want to be able to maybe see a show. You want to be able to go to a park if there's some park amenities there. So we're looking at all those different things, because at the end of the day, it's about providing a better quality of life for our residents, and that's what we've been focused on, and we're really starting to see it pay off.
One of the things that we just did in Westland recently was we started kind of branding our city a little bit better, and we've started to install wayfinding signs throughout the community, and we've really doubled down in the shopping area, which we call our Shop and Dine district. And a lot of the community really had a positive response to the signs. We've actually in the beginning phase of it, but then there were several that also questioned the signs and if they were needed and if it was a good expense or not. So I know Sterling Heights, you guys have done some branding yourself, and you've gotten a lot of attention as well. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think on top of a lot of people's mind, whether it's in Sterling Heights or Westland, or I just got a message from somebody in Grand Rapids about this new landmark sign that we put on Hall Road. I call it the Golden Ring. Some people have another name for it, but I think it's distinctive and unique, and it's one of the most interesting things that's being talked about in Macomb County. We have a philosophy in Sterling Heights that when we do a roadway, we're not just going to lay the infrastructure. We're not just going to provide a good roadway. That's obviously the most important thing. But we're going to do enhanced landscaping. We're going to do wayfinding signage. We're going to do the brick paver walkways. We're going to do mast arms. We're going to do whatever we can to make the entire area look better. Because it's like the broken window theory. When your neighborhood looks nice, when you keep up your house, your neighbors do too. And so this is a bold plan, this sign, no doubt about it, and we've taken some heat over it. But it's getting a conversation started about Sterling Heights and about Macomb County in a way that probably a lot of your viewers here have never heard before. Maybe you know now about C.J. Barrymore's, or maybe you know now about the professional baseball field in Utica. Maybe you've heard about Lakeside Mall now. I've heard from people who are specifically driving from a long area away just to go see that sign. And then when they're there, they stop and have some lunch, and they maybe fill up their gas tank, and they go to one of the stores. There's mile after mile of retail there that people don't realize. And so whenever we do a project, we're looking for that wow factor. We're looking to draw attention, and I think we certainly did it with the Golden Ring.
All right. Well, when I saw it, the first thing I thought of was, what a beautiful gateway sign. So I thought that you did a nice job, and I know that the media jumped on it, and I thought that you personally, as the mayor, that you represented your city well, and you handled it very professionally.
Well, I thank you, Mayor, and that is the message that we wanted to get across. It is a gateway to a number of different communities: Sterling Heights, Clinton Township, Macomb Township, Shelby Township, Chesterfield, Utica, all along that corridor. That's the border of all those different communities, and it is a gateway. It's actually, the design is a modern interpretation of an ancient Chinese moon gate, and these moon gates served as kind of a portal into your garden or into a different area. So that's what we want people to know, that you are entering into an area of many different communities tied together by this important commercial corridor that has a lot to offer residents, businesses, and people.
All right. Well, very nice. And thanks for sharing a lot of the great things happening in Sterling Heights. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back with our next segment. We're going to bring Dan Fredenau back from OHM. We're going to put him and the mayor on the hot seat. We're going to get down and dirty. We're going to talk about, do we really think that the federal government's going to get off the mark on infrastructure? Is the president really going to be able to pass an infrastructure bill? And we're going to talk about the governor's upcoming budget to see if once and for all we're finally going to fix the darn roads here in the state of Michigan. We'll be right back.
All right, I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey Gabby, how you doing? How's the play date and sleepover?
Dad, it was great.
Awesome. Okay, I'm on my way. Hey guys, what are you doing?
We're going swimming! We're going biking! Yeah!
I'll
see you in a little bit, guys. I love you.
Hi, babe. How was school today?
Hi, Dad. It was great.
Okay, honey. I'll be home soon. Remember, you're never too far away from your kids to be a dad. Reach out and take a second to check in, because sometimes the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Welcome back to In the W. So today we're talking infrastructure, and joining us for our third segment, we're bringing back Sterling Heights Mayor Michael Taylor and OHM Advisors Vice President Dan Fredendahl. And gentlemen, we actually have a third guest on this portion of the show. This is beauty. A couple weeks ago was leaning against the front door here at Westland City Hall, and right after we had that bad stretch of cold weather, with that nice little Michigan warm-up right afterwards, Warren Road right in front of City Hall here started to kind of come apart, and this is one of the bigger chunks that worked itself free, and a local resident dropped it off here at City Hall with a nice little letter to the mayor, saying they wanted the road fixed, and of course they reached out to the local media, and Channel 7 actually came out and did a little story about it. So let's take a look at the video.
Around Metro Detroit frustrated one driver so much after hitting a pothole, she brought a chunk of the crumbling concrete and a page-long letter to City Hall. 7 Action News reporter Jennifer Ann Wilson got a look at her unique message and how the city of Westland is responding.
Yeah, it was a chunk of concrete similar to this that was left at the door of City Hall along with a note to the mayor. And the mayor tells me his city crews have been out here searching for that hole, patching the road all day. This is the rock that blocked the door that accompanied the letter that was taped to the glass that made it to the Westland mayor's desk.
As you can clearly see, this slab of roadway broke apart from the street, then found itself situated on the top of the road several feet away from the magnificent pothole it left in its absence.
It happened on a rough stretch of Warren Road between City Hall and Westland Mall. The road belongs to Wayne County, but the city of Westland stepped up.
When we found out about this morning, I had our Westland crews go out and fix the hole. But just last week we had the Westland crews and the Wayne County crews working hand in hand trying to get this road, put back together.
Mayor Wild says more needs to be done.
We get a lot of calls and emails. Warren Road is one of those roads that we got to get fixed. I travel it. I hear it at home from my wife too when she goes to the mall. So. But at the end of the day, it's something, we got a great working relationship with Wayne County, and I think this is something we can work together, for the future to come up with a more permanent fix.
While he hears from residents all the time, this message.
This one may go in our local Hall of Fame.
All along the road, you can see there's several chunks of concrete. That's on purpose. They say they had crews out here on Friday trying to remove all these loose pieces of concrete from the road so they don't hit cars, so cars don't hit them, and fill it with patches. They're hoping to have a long-term solution soon. In Westland, I'm Jennifer Ann Wilson, 7 Action News.
So as you guys can see, this is probably in the city of Westland's Complaint Hall of Fame. This is going to be one of our major pieces there. So Mayor, I know you don't get letters like that in Sterling Heights, and of course you don't have potholes this big out there in Macomb County, do you?
I think we probably do. I luckily haven't had any dropped off at our doorstep yet, but I've seen people out on the roads dodging cars, picking up chunks, maybe not that big. It's certainly a huge issue, and from my standpoint, I appreciate when residents put the heat on us so that we can keep the conversation going with our county partners and our state partners in the federal government to make sure that this gets addressed, because this is not a joke. This is serious and could cause real damage to somebody's not just their car, but their life as well.
Absolutely. So this is actually a county road, but it is right here in front of City Hall. It is part of our shop and dine district. So in this instance, we had the city crews go out and fix it as quick as we could. But what it was probably the beauty of it, Dan, you'll appreciate this, was it really gave us the opportunity to open up a conversation with the county that this is a major road in Wayne County that we need to work together to get fixed. And ultimately, I think it's going to be a mixture of a little bit of federal money with some county money and some city money, which will get this project fixed. And so that's where I want to talk with you guys. So with the governor's state of the state, it's under her belt now. She's going to be putting her budget together. In your guys' opinion, after you've had a chance to see the state of the state, do you think that we're actually going to be able to fix the roads? And do you think that there is a solution? That, my biggest fear as a mayor is that if this is going to be the #1 priority of the state, unless we're raising taxes, we're going to, all of us are going to have to take a haircut. So, I'm not quite sure what the plan is. So I'd like to get your guys' opinion, and we'll start off. Let's start off with Dan.
Well, again, you're a little out of my league in that this is what I'm going to call policy. We've seen the discussions on it for over 20 years now. Something happened in 2015. Interesting. That revenue still is not fully coming into the system yet. But with that, what you are hearing on what I'm going to call both sides of the aisle up in Lansing, at least what I'm hearing, is a willingness to consider additional revenue. Now, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Am I optimistic? I guess I'm always optimistic. So I just can't see where you can cut any more on the municipal side. I don't see where you can really cut any more on the state side. So we're going to have to see some additional revenue to address it.
Well, Mayor, what were your thoughts when you heard the governor speak about this at the State of the State? And do you have any thoughts moving forward on where the revenue comes from?
Well, I definitely have thoughts on that. I thought the governor's speech was a good speech. It's I could criticize here or there, but she's been on the job for 2 months, so she was a little light on specifics and details. And hopefully, with the budget coming out shortly, we'll see some of those blanks filled in. But what I'd like to hear from the governor and from the state is where does the money come from? Because this problem is simple when you think of it in terms of dollars. Even with the registration fees that were increased and the gas tax, we're still going to have about a $2 billion shortfall in what the state is saying needs to be done. So in 2021, when that's fully phased in, the registration and gas tax increases that recently went into effect, that's going to get us about $1 billion. We need $3 billion. So where does the other $2 billion come from? In terms of cuts, you really can't do it. You look at the state's budget, and in terms of the discretionary budget, there's just not enough. You cannot cut. You're talking about cutting, almost the entire corrections budget. It's not possible. So it has to come through new revenue, and we already have high gas taxes. But what other states are doing is they're using money from their general fund. They're having a sales tax. They're increasing the income tax. All of those options should be on the table. If we increase sales tax by 1%, that'll get us, I think, about $1.5 billion. If we increase the income tax by 1%, that gets us $2 billion. Nobody wants that, but if we want to be serious about fixing the roads here in Michigan, and I think the governor is, that's what it's going to take.
Do you think the population's skeptical? I mean, if you think about just a few years back, there was a ballot initiative to fix the roads.
Yeah, I think they're afraid of that. Anytime that ballot proposal from 2015, I think it was we're going to raise here, we're going to raise here. Some's going to go to transit, some's going to go to this. It was like trying to fix every problem with that one proposal. We need a simple, straightforward proposal that people can understand, that guarantees we're going to say raise the sales tax or raise the income tax and make it guaranteed that money has to go to roads and there's no way around it. And unfortunately, the other thing that we really need here in Southeast Michigan is we need reform of Public Act 51 that allocates the money, because we're seeing too much of our money go out state to the more rural areas. That's not happening up in northern Michigan like it's happening here, because we just have more traffic, we have more people. And so we need to reform that so we get more money here, but that's what I call changing the pie, slicing the pie up differently. We can slice up the pie up differently, but we need to grow the pie as well. So those are the two things that we need to do here in Southeast Michigan and statewide.
So Dan, so you have a Democratic governor, you have Republican House and Senate. Do you think that this is a bipartisan thing? Do you think that the governor and the legislature can come together over fixing the roads? I mean,
We still haven't fixed the city of Flint's water system, so, but at the end of the day, do you think that we can come together and fix roads?
The short answer, yes. Can we? Yes. And actually, I think in this one, we will. It won't be easy, it won't be pretty. I do think they'll get something done. I think you've got an experienced governor that's been through the legislative process. And she's demonstrated that she is willing to put stuff on the table and then have discussions. So let's hope that those discussions lead to something. It won't be easy.
Well, let's change gears and let's talk about it at the federal level, because obviously infrastructure is not just a Michigan issue, it's a federal issue. And for Michigan to fix our roads and tackle some of the infrastructure issues that we talked about in the first segment, Dan, we're gonna have to have a willing federal partner. So if we think back to President Trump's inauguration day, and when he talked about bringing the country together after a very divided election, he spent a lot of time talking about infrastructure, that we were going to reinvest in the United States and that we were going to start off with infrastructure. Since then, there hasn't been much talk about infrastructure. We've talked about a lot of other things. So do you think that this president going into the second half of his first term can pull together an infrastructure bill out of the legislature and actually start getting money back to the states and to the cities? We'll start off with you, Mayor.
Well, if you watched the State of the Union address, I would say I'm not optimistic about that. When he came in, he talked about $1 trillion infrastructure plan. In his State of the Union, he had maybe 3 sentences about infrastructure, if you don't count when he talked about the wall. So that's an infrastructure plan, I guess, the wall on the southern border, but it's not the kind of infrastructure plan that we need here in the state of Michigan and in southeast Michigan. What I would say, though, just to kind of tie it back to Governor Whitmer, though, what I noticed from President Trump's State of the Union is that he spent the majority of his time talking about the wall, which was his main campaign promise. And he became determined to do something about following up on that promise. Governor Whitmer's main campaign promise was to fix the darn roads, to put it nicely. So my hope is that she'll have that same determination and stay focused on it. And maybe as Dan is optimistic, I think I'm optimistic that she's not going to let this issue go. She's made this her campaign pledge. She's made it the centerpiece of her administration and her governorship, and I'm hopeful that we can get something done. But again, to tie it back to the federal government, a lot of the funding needs to come from the federal government. They have the resources that cities and states don't necessarily have. And there needs to be a conversation at a federal level about rebuilding this great infrastructure that we have here in the United States.
So Dan, at the federal level, do you see the legislature coming together on an infrastructure bill?
I'm not as optimistic as I am for Michigan, call it getting it done, a little bit for what Mayor Taylor has stated. You'd like to think it's a focus. It's been stated as a focus. There's just the chasm between the two parties, in my opinion, is too large. If they could get in a room and talk, I think they could get it done. But I honestly question if they will.
But roads and infrastructure and bridges, these are not partisan issues. That chunk of concrete should not be something standing in the way. Our Republicans and Democrats, our differences should not be standing in the way of getting infrastructure fixed. I mean, I think that would be something that everyone at the federal level would think is a good thing. But part of it, I think, though, Dan and Mayor, is that the other states are fixing their infrastructure. They have funding in place, and it's not as bad as it is in Michigan. So it's exacerbated here.
It is, and when you talk infrastructure on the federal level, I think so that our viewers are aware, well, we look at roads and bridges here in Michigan. Other areas are looking at ports, airports, and those are large things that the federal government has to take care of, i.e., the Soo Locks for Michigan, multi-billion-dollar project. Well, for those people along the Ohio River, along the Mississippi, there's 5 or 6 Soo Locks, that need to be repaired. So if we're going to be economically stable and looking at a world economy, we do have to address those other issues, and so that all gets caught up in it. It's, I'd like to say it's simple, and none of those issues should be partisan.
Well, Dan, I think you're right, and when you talk, the mayor mentioned that, the president mentioned $1 trillion issue. When you start to look at infrastructure in its broad sense, like you said, infrastructure means a lot of different things at the federal level. If you're talking airports and ports and tunnels and bridges and broadband, there's a lot of different things. So there's a lot of different, infrastructure projects competing for those dollars. So, but I think it really just shows the need is out there. And I think, as the mayor had mentioned, it should not be a partisan issue on fixing roads, because every legislator in Washington, every legislator in Lansing lives in a community that has infrastructure needs. So at some point, maybe it's the local voters that can turn up the heat on these legislators and actually start get them to come together. So I appreciate both of you being here today. We covered a lot of different stuff, and Mayor, we appreciate your work in Sterling Heights. I appreciate you and I have had a chance to work together a little bit at the federal level at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Infrastructure is probably the #1 issue that mayors are facing across the country right now. So I look forward to continuing our dialogue.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be with another mayor, so thank you.
All right, and Dan, we appreciate your work as a city's engineer for all these years, and we also appreciate you being at the table on this Governor's Infrastructure Council. I think, as one of your clients, I think it serves us well to have you at the table, and I know it suits the state well to have somebody with your experience working on their behalf as well.
I certainly hope, I appreciate that, and I also, similar to you two, hope to bring, call it the local influence, probably isn't the right word, but just that the local issues to the state table, and I'll continue to do so.
All right, well, thank you both for being with us today, and thank you for watching. Thank you to this guy or gal right here. I think we need a name for this thing. If we're going to put it in the Westland Complaint Hall of Fame, we got to have a good name for it. So if any of our viewers have a good name for this piece of historic roadway.
Be careful with that, because you might end up with a name you don't like.
All right, well, that's good advice from the mayor. So, no doubt the state of Michigan's facing a lot of serious issues as far as infrastructure. We look forward to Governor Whitmer's upcoming budget proposal. Hopefully that there is a fix that can get bipartisan support so we can fix these roads here in the state of Michigan. So with that, thank you for watching this episode of In the W, where we talk about local issues on a regional look. So have a great day, and we'll see you on the next show.